Right now, there are thousands of people lying on these plush beds in high-end beauty salons, paying top dollar to have their stomachs strapped to these industrial water-cooled vacuums.
Vacuums that literally freeze their tissue.
Exactly. I mean, if you've ever scrolled through Instagram and seen those ads for med spas with the sleek, glowing machines attached to a client's abdomen, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, they are everywhere. It's a huge trend right now.
It really is. But the wildest part to me isn't even the science of freezing human fat. It is the fact that the person operating that high-powered machine, well, they might have learned how to do it entirely from their laptop.
Which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Right. So welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the body sculpting industry. It's this world that looks, perfectly polished from the outside, but underneath, it relies on a surprisingly intricate, highly mechanical, and fiercely strategic engine.
It is a fascinating juxtaposition, and to really understand how this industry operates, we aren't just looking at glossy marketing brochures.
Definitely not. No highly edited before and after photos today.
Right. We are digging directly into the source code of the profession. We are analyzing the actual website materials and the detailed course syllabus from Bodi Slim, which is Australia's #1 body sculpting certified trainer.
And looking at a syllabus is just, it's one of the absolute best ways to understand a profession.
It really is. When you see what an academy prioritizes in its training, you completely move past the advertising. You get this unvarnished look at the intersection of human biology, industrial technology, and small business economics.
Which brings us to our mission for today. We are looking at a 100% online self-paced certification course for a procedure called fat freezing or cryolipolysis. And we want to unpack the exact blueprint of how these technicians are trained. We are going to explore the biological reality of the human body they have to navigate, the crazy industrial mechanics of the devices themselves, and that broader business ecosystem of modern beauty salons.
And that ecosystem requires a massive amount of specialized knowledge. I mean, you cannot just buy a machine and start freezing people.
Right, you'd hope not.
Yeah, the training actually demands a real biological understanding of human anatomy as a strict foundational requirement before you can even touch a machine.
Which is exactly where the syllabus starts, and it's such an important foundation. The training doesn't just say, here's how you turn the machine on.
No, not at all.
It specifically requires the student to learn the physical difference between subcutaneous fat and visceral fat.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense, because I think most people just think of fat as, well, just fat.
Exactly. People just see a protruding stomach and think it's all the same thing.
But the difference between subcutaneous and visceral fat is, it's kind of like the difference between the fat you can easily trim off the outside edge of a steak versus the marbling that is woven deep inside the meat itself.
That steak analogy is the perfect way to visualize it. Subcutaneous fat is that trimmable fat. It sits just underneath the skin.
That's the soft stuff.
Right. It is soft, it is squishy, and most importantly, it is pinchable. Visceral fat, on the other hand, is the marbling. That sits deep inside the abdominal cavity, packed tightly around your internal organs.
Like the liver and intestines and all that.
Exactly. Because it is trapped beneath the muscle wall, it is firm. You cannot pinch it at all. If a person has a protruding abdomen caused by visceral fat, their stomach will feel hard to the touch.
So does this mean the course is training technicians to essentially act as amateur anatomists right out of the gate? Like they have to identify exactly which type of fat a client has before they even turn the machine on?
Yes, absolutely. And the reason why this is so critical is rooted in the actual physical mechanism of the treatment itself. Cryolipolysis literally translates to the cold-induced destruction of fat cells.
Right.
So these machines are designed to pull a pocket of tissue into a cup using a very powerful vacuum suction and then rapidly cool that specific fold of tissue.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, because of how the applicator works, it only functions on subcutaneous fat. If a technician doesn't know the difference and tries to treat a client with hard, unpinchable, visceral fat, the machine physically cannot grasp the tissue.
The suction cup would just slide right off.
Precisely, it would just pop off. The procedure wouldn't work, the client wouldn't see results, and honestly, the salon's reputation would take a massive hit.
That makes total sense.
If a tech cannot accurately identify the right type of fat by physically palpating the area during a consultation, the entire treatment is structurally doomed from minute one.
Wow, okay. So Let's say the technician has accurately identified the right kind of soft, pinchable, subcutaneous fat on a client. Now they actually have to freeze it.
This is where the science gets incredibly specific.
Yeah, because looking at the syllabus, it dives deep into the theory of cryolipolysis. And there is a very specific reason why freezing the fat doesn't just give the client severe frostbite all over their stomach.
Right, and this is where we get into lipid crystallization. It's fascinating.
I love this part.
To understand how it works, think about putting a stick of butter and a glass of water into your refrigerator. The refrigerator is cold, but it is not cold enough to freeze the water.
Right, the water stays completely liquid.
But the stick of butter gets rock solid.
Because butter is mostly fat, and fat hardens at a warmer temperature than water does.
Exactly. Fat cells in the human body are lipid-rich, just like that butter. Skin cells, however, are largely composed of water.
Oh, I see.
Therefore, fat cells will crystallize and die at a higher temperature than the water-rich skin cells surrounding them. The entire premise of this procedure relies on this specific thermal gap.
So you lower the temperature of the tissue fold to a very precise point.
Right. Cold enough to crystallize the lipid-rich fat cells, but not so cold that you freeze and destroy the water-rich skin cells.
That is just a brilliant biological loophole. The machine is literally exploiting the different freezing points of water and lipids.
It really is clever.
But actually executing that in a salon setting sounds incredibly complex, which brings us to the machinery itself. Looking at the practical video tutorials in the syllabus, the evolution of this technology is pretty wild.
The tech moves at a blistering pace in this industry.
Yeah, because the course covers traditional dual-plate machines as well as newer 360-degree applicators.
Right, so the traditional dual-plate machines are essentially two cooling panels situated on either side of a vacuum suction cup. They pull the fat in and chill it from two sides.
It's like a sandwich.
Exactly, but the newer 360-degree applicators cool the entire interior surface of the cup. That changes everything about the treatment dynamics.
How so?
Well, it changes how evenly the tissue is cooled, it drastically reduces the treatment time, and it changes how the technician needs to physically position the handles on the client's body.
And this is where the curtain really gets pulled back for me. Because the syllabus details the nitty-gritty of setting up these machines, and it sounds fiercely industrial.
Oh, very much so.
If you've ever been to a luxury med spa, you see a sleek white machine with a glowing touchscreen. It looks so high-end. But the training videos cover things like, quote, adding water to your machine and filter machine maintenance.
And troubleshooting suction and handles?
Right. I have to be honest, changing water filters and troubleshooting vacuum sounds more like prepping a car for a winter road trip than a luxury salon service. Is this a spa day or a visit to the mechanic?
It really shatters the illusion of the effortless spa day, doesn't it? But this is exactly why formal training is absolutely vital. It grounds the magic of body sculpting in actual physics and fluid dynamics.
Yeah, these are serious pieces of equipment.
Highly complex, water-cooled mechanical systems.
So wait, why do they even need water cooling if the goal is to make things freezing cold?
It all comes down to thermodynamics. To create that intense freezing effect at the applicators, the machine's internal components have to work incredibly hard.
So they generate heat.
A massive amount of heat inside the base unit. It functions very much like a high-performance computer or a car engine. It uses an internal water circulation system to act as a heat exchanger.
Pulling heat away from the core so it doesn't just melt down.
Exactly. If a technician doesn't maintain the water levels, or if they neglect to clean those internal filters, the machine will overheat, throw an error code, and completely break down right in the middle of a treatment.
Wow. So they are essentially operating a highly tuned industrial refrigerator. And they also have to manage the vacuum mechanics, right? The syllabus mentions that technicians must learn to select the correct KPA.
Yes. KPA stands for kilopascals. It is a unit of atmospheric pressure.
Yeah.
This isn't a situation where you just slap a suction cup on a client and crank it on high. The technician has to dial in the exact atmospheric pressure needed to pull the fat fold into the applicator securely.
So it has to be perfectly balanced.
Right. If the KPA is too low, the applicator just falls off. But if the KPA is too high, you risk severely bruising the skin, damaging blood vessels, or causing the client an immense amount of pain.
Ouch.
Yeah, troubleshooting that suction and finding the perfect KPA for different body types is a highly mechanical, highly sensitive skill.
And speaking of sensitive, there is a whole section dedicated to anti-freeze membranes. We just talked about the butter and water analogy and how skin cells freeze at lower temperatures than fat cells.
Right, the thermal gap.
But even with that gap, applying a freezing metal plate directly to human skin for 45 minutes sounds like a recipe for a surface-level ice burn.
It absolutely would be without the antifreeze membrane. This is arguably the most critical safety mechanism of the entire procedure.
Really?
Yes. Before the technician ever applies the suction cup, they place this membrane, which is essentially a specialized gel pad, directly over the target area on the client's body.
So it acts as a buffer.
It creates a protective thermal barrier. The gel is formulated to prevent the water in the epidermis, the top layer of the skin, from freezing solid.
Oh, that makes sense.
It allows the intense cold to penetrate deeply through the skin and into the lipid-rich fat layer underneath without giving the surface of the skin literal frostbite.
It is wild to think about the technician constantly balancing all these elements. I mean, they are managing thermodynamics, atmospheric pressure, lipid crystallization, and chemical thermal barriers.
All while playing soft spa music and asking the client if they are comfortable.
Right. It is a highly engineered process disguised as a relaxing afternoon.
Exactly.
But, no matter how perfectly maintained a 360-degree machine is, or how perfectly dialed in those kilopascals are, applying all of this industrial technology to a living, breathing human being requires a totally different set of protocols.
It does. The human element introduces a level of variability that a machine simply cannot account for.
And that variability is where the real risk lies. Which brings us to a fascinating contrast in the syllabus. Right alongside the high-tech video tutorials on water-cooled systems, there's a dedicated section on using calipers.
Yes, the calipers.
It struck me as so jarring.
Yeah.
You have these advanced computerized freezing machines, and right next to them on the tray, the technician is using a cheap plastic caliper. It feels so old school. It almost sounds like a tailor measuring you for a bespoke suit.
It is very analog, I will give you that, but it is entirely non-negotiable for treatment mapping.
Why is it so crucial?
Before you even open an antifreeze membrane, you have to measure the exact thickness of the fat fold using those calipers. You need objective, physical data to determine if the client actually has enough pinchable fat to safely fit into the applicator vacuum.
Right, you can't just guess.
No, definitely not. Furthermore, you need a baseline measurement to track their progress over multiple sessions. You cannot just eyeball a client's stomach and guess how many millimeters of fat they have lost.
That makes total sense, but it also highlights the vulnerability of the client in that moment. If you put yourself in their shoes, they are standing there being pinched, measured, and evaluated.
It can be a very sensitive experience.
And the Bodi Slim syllabus really seems to respect the gravity of what is happening in that room. With modules dedicated to side effects and scientific studies, this syllabus makes it clear this is a serious procedure, right?
Oh, absolutely. There is a huge focus on contraindications.
Which is the medical term for conditions that mean a person should absolutely avoid cryolipolysis.
Right. And this is where the liability comes into play. A major part of a technician's job, arguably the most important part, is knowing when to look at a paying client and say no.
Which has to be incredibly hard when you are running a small business and you have overhead to pay. Turning away money goes against every entrepreneurial instinct.
It does, but you have to consider the alternative. If a client has certain medical conditions, the risks are literally catastrophic.
Like what kind of conditions?
Take something like cold agglutinin disease, which is a rare blood disorder where cold temperatures cause red blood cells to clump together. Or consider a client who has a hernia in the treatment area.
Oh, wow.
If you apply a high-powered vacuum suction and freezing temperatures to a hernia, you could cause a severe medical emergency right there in the salon.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, the syllabus forces the student to learn these contraindications because client safety, and by extension, the salon's legal and financial survival, depends entirely on it.
Which perfectly explains the heavy emphasis on client consultation and consent forms. It is not just about having a client sign a piece of paper to cover the salon's legal basis.
No, it's an investigative process.
Right. The technician has to evaluate the client's health history, manage their expectations, and fully explain the potential side effects.
The syllabus actually provides all the essential client documentation plus pre-care and post-care guidance to make sure the tech is fully prepared.
Having a rock-solid structured consultation process seems just as important as the physical application of the machine. If a client isn't legally and medically cleared, the machine should never even be turned on.
Exactly.
I also love that, sprinkled in among all this incredibly serious medical, legal, and mechanical instruction, there's a section called Tanya's Treatment Tips.
Yeah, that is a great addition.
It adds this very human, mentor-like touch to the syllabus. It's not just a sterile textbook. It is someone who has clearly been in the trenches, sharing the practical, unwritten rules of the salon floor.
And that mentorship transitions us directly into the economic reality of the industry. Because if you are taking on the massive physical liability of freezing someone's tissue, you better not be taking on unnecessary financial liability by running your business poorly.
Exactly. So once you understand the biology, the machinery, and the safety protocols, Bodi Slim pivots hard to the reality of actually running a profitable salon.
The business strategy is huge.
And they start with a very specific and, frankly, counterintuitive piece of advice about buying equipment. The syllabus states in big, bold letters, machine not included.
Right, the purchase is for the certified training only.
And they follow that up by stating, we strongly recommend completing the course first so you are fully educated before investing in equipment. I love this rule of learn before you buy.
It is incredibly sound business advice.
Yeah, because doing the reverse would be like buying a literal Formula One race car before you've even taken a single driving lesson.
That is exactly what it is like. These machines are a massive capital investment for a small business owner. We are talking thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars.
And there are so many of them out there.
The current market is completely flooded with devices that vary wildly in quality, power output, and mechanical reliability.
So a new salon owner might go online, see a machine that looks sleek and professional on the outside, and drop 10 grand on it, completely unaware of what is actually inside the casing.
Precisely. If they buy the first machine they see without understanding KPA limits or internal water cooling systems or the stark difference between dual plate and 360-degree applicators, they could easily buy a lemon.
And then they are stuck with it.
Right. They end up with a machine that either breaks down constantly or simply doesn't get results. By forcing the student to learn the mechanics first, Bodi Slim prevents those expensive mistakes.
Yeah, it's so smart.
They even give enrolled students the ability to send machine specifications to their experts for review before the student makes purchase. Plus, they provide student-only supplier discounts for trusted medical-grade equipment.
That is a huge safety net for a new business owner.
Yeah.
But looking at the broader Bodi Slim website, you quickly realize that fat freezing is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Oh, absolutely. It is just the beginning.
The site lists a massive menu of other treatments that they offer and train technicians on. We are talking about EMS muscle stimulation, RDD light therapy, the green melt fat wrap.
Liquid lipo, advanced microchanneling, the G5 lymphatic machine.
Yeah, it is an enormous catalog of services.
Which tells us everything we need to know about the unit economics of modern beauty salons. You cannot survive, let alone thrive, on just one treatment modality.
Right.
Bodi Slim is teaching its students to build a comprehensive ecosystem of services. The goal is to maximize the lifetime value, or LTV, of every single client who walks through the door.
Because customer acquisition is expensive.
Yeah.
If you spend marketing dollars to get a client in the door for a fat freezing session, you want to be able to offer them something else once that session is over.
Exactly. A client might come in for cryolipolysis, but during the consultation, you realize they also struggle with skin laxity.
So you cross-sell.
Right. You offer them a RED light therapy package or a liquid lipo treatment or a green melt fat wrap as a complimentary service.
You are building a customized treatment plan.
Which addresses multiple concerns and keeps the client returning to your salon instead of going down the street to a competitor.
And that strategy leads perfectly into the final section of the syllabus, which really feels like a masterclass in business development.
It really is.
Once a student has mastered the basics, identifying the fat, operating the machine, memorizing the safety protocols, the curriculum introduces an advanced module focused on something called the ContourIQ technique.
This is where the training moves away from standard machine operation and enters the realm of advanced market strategy.
Yeah, the syllabus details that this proprietary technique specifically combines standard fat freezing with laser lipolysis.
Why combine them, right?
Exactly. I was wondering, is this just a way to upsell a client by throwing a laser into the freezing mix? But looking at this from a business perspective, combining laser lipo with freezing under a trademark name like ContourIQ is just brilliant marketing.
You hit the nail on the head.
You are no longer competing on price for a generic fat freezing session that the salon down the street also offers. You're selling a proprietary branded system.
In a highly crowded beauty market, every med spa on the block offers cryolipolysis. How do you make your salon stand out? You need a unique selling proposition, a USP.
Right.
By having a branded multimodality approach like ContourIQ, you give your salon something distinct and marketable that competitors just don't have.
So it's not just about the combined biological effect of using a laser alongside the freezing temperatures. It is heavily about the packaging of the procedure.
It elevates the perceived value of the entire service. You aren't just selling 45 minutes hooked up to a vacuum.
Right.
You are selling an exclusive, specialized technique. And the fact that the syllabus dedicates a significant portion of this module specifically to marketing the technique proves that Bodi Slim understands the reality of the industry.
You can be the safest, most mechanically proficient tech in the world, but if you don't know how to sell it,
Your salon will fail. It is the ultimate synthesis of science and sales.
man, what a journey. So what does this all mean for you listening? Let's take a step back and recap what we've just uncovered.
It has been a lot of ground to cover.
It really has. We started by literally identifying the difference between the trimmable fat you can pinch and the visceral fat you can't. We unpacked that biological loophole of lipid crystallization.
The butter in the fridge.
Exactly. We navigated the surprisingly industrial mechanics of water-cooled machines, atmospheric suction, and the vital thermal barrier of antifreeze membranes.
We can't forget the calipers.
Right. We explored the strict, tailor-like precision of physical caliper measurements and the non-negotiable safety protocols of contraindications.
Knowing when to say no.
And we finished with the strategic business reality of building a multi-treatment ecosystem and marketing a proprietary technique like ContourIQ to actually survive in a competitive market.
It is a massive amount of highly specialized, incredibly dense information. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, something that really struck me when reviewing all of these sources.
I would love to hear it.
We have just spent all this time detailing an incredibly hands-on, highly clinical procedure. It involves operating powerful medical-grade equipment, taking precise physical measurements on a human body, balancing thermodynamics, and navigating strict medical contraindications to prevent severe physical harm.
Yeah.
And yet, this entire blueprint, all of this complex instruction, is delivered through a 100% self-paced online course.
Wow, it really is a wild paradox. You are learning the intricacies of freezing human tissue and operating high-pressure vacuums entirely from a laptop in your living room.
It is, and it invites a really profound question about the future of physical beauty and medical services. As the technology gets smarter, as these machines get more advanced with their own internal safeguards and automated sensors, will the barrier to entry for performing these physical procedures continue to move entirely onto the internet?
That is wild to think about.
We are looking at a future where hands-on clinical skills are being aggressively decentralized and digitized.
It really makes you rethink the entire landscape of education and physical services. You start out wanting to learn how a salon freezes fat, and you end up contemplating the digitization of human biology and the democratization of clinical skills.
It goes deep.
It really does. Well, we promised you a look behind the scenes of the body sculpting industry. And turns out the real story isn't just about freezing tissue. It's about how the modern beauty industry is engineering both the human body and the small business owner from the ground up. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep asking questions, and we will catch you next time.